Okay, welcome back to our world religion class. We're on lesson 2, and we're going to delve into Hinduism. We're going to start with the major Eastern religions, and then we'll work our way into the major Western religions. And we're going to start with probably the oldest Eastern religion, which is Hinduism. Now, again, when I say it's a religion, it is, but it's kind of a syncretism, a melding together of a lot of traditions from the Indian subcontinent. And as you saw in probably the videos and the reading, it is kind of diverse in its rituals, beliefs, in its number of gods, in its holy books. There are a lot of holy books. Like Christians, we just have the Bible basically, and Muslims have their Quran, and they have the Bible, and they have another book that is really important to them. But when you look at this particular religion, there are a lot more books involved with it, so many that we can't really focus on them. But enough of an introduction there. I brought into this lesson some questions that I think are really relevant for understanding some of the basic tenets of Hinduism. And we're going to start by dealing with those questions, and then we'll get into the videos, which kind of focused on an overview of Hinduism from somebody's perspective, and then also a little bit about the gods within Hinduism, which I think is an important topic that we should address also. So let's get started by looking at the first question: what is Atman? And I'll just approach this like we did last time, since we don't have too many people. I'm just going to go around the room. And again, if you don't have anything to add to the question, that's perfectly fine. But let's start at the other end this time, Carl. Since you're on the top line again, I'll give you a break. Sharon, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
which
Sharon. Again, if you didn't have time to get all the reading done, that's okay. But can you add anything to the question to answer question number 1?
First off, there's 2 Sharons, so did you mean me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Sharon Thomas. I'm sorry. I'm looking at Sharon Thomas on the bottom here, and I got Sharon Wilson up top. So let's go start with Sharon Thomas.
Okay. Yeah, I got that it was the God within, the hidden self that consists of infinite being, infinite awareness, infinite bliss.
Okay, very good, very good. Let's go to Neil. Neil, can you add anything to that, or do you want to comment on that at all?
Really, no comments. The God within was the easiest definition to write down, I guess. So,
I think so. I think so. Jamie?
I had read about it being unrestricted consciousness, like it's the soul that is in you, the soul that is you. So along with that hidden self, something that never dies.
Yeah, those are some nice things to add to it, Jamie, because when you get into Hinduism and the concept of reincarnation, again, whatever is that thing that lives on, it literally does live on. They don't believe that they're resting in the grave, that they're unconscious, that they're not aware. They definitely believe that they do have an awareness, and part of life, part of this cycle of rebirth and death is to get to a point where you get back to the ultimate God and you become part of that ultimate God, which is kind of an impersonal concept, not like the Christian concept of God, which is personal, and we've got a separation from God. No doubt there's a oneness that we have with God on the Christian side, but there definitely is more of a oneness on the Hindu side, because you become part of the God in a sense that you kind of lose yourself in that. And I don't want to get too deep into that's going to take us away from what we're trying to do tonight. But it is a different idea than what Christians have when they talk about being one with God. The Hindus' oneness with God is like you're a drop of water in an ocean that is God. And so when you think a drop of water in the ocean, it's like, where do you find that part of you? It all looks the same. It all seems to act the same. But Christianity definitely gives distinction in the various beings that are going to become God, as we believe. So that's a good point to bring up in this when we get deeper into this Atman. Maria, do you have anything to add on this or comments?
No, I think everybody already said pretty much
Okay,
what I.
very good. Very good. Sharon, how about you?
Pretty much the same, just the God within.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. You can again, some people will get mad at us in the Church of God because we talk about becoming God. We know how we talk about that, but we will get critics who will hear that and they'll think that we're trying to throw some Hinduism into what we're talking about when actually we're not. They need to do a little more reading. So again, don't let people throw that argument at us in the Church of God. There definitely are distinctions in how this understanding is from the eastern side and the western side. Carl, you got anything to add to this?
Nothing really to add. I did have a question. Is the Atman, is that their, I guess that's their equivalent of the immortal soul?
Yeah, yeah, you could say that. You could, if you want to look for an immortal soul concept in Hinduism, I definitely would say that this would be it. Okay, that's and so that's a good point to bring up though, Carl, because it gets into this idea that most other religions, even Christian religion, okay, they all seem to have something that's living on after death. We're going to look at Buddhism later. It's a little bit different in Buddhism. We'll see that when you read about that. I'm not going to get into that now, but that's a major difference between Church of God belief and most every other religion out there, whether it's Christian or Eastern or Islam or whatever, that there's an idea of an immortal soul. Now, not necessarily in Judaism, but definitely in the more reformed and liberal elements of Judaism. They've got some different ideas than original Jews had way back in the Old Testament time. So we'll get into all that later, but that's a great point to make on this, Carl, that I should have brought up. And thank you for bringing it up. That's why we get together in a class, because things I forget or things you didn't think about, we try to bring that all together in our discussion. Okay, let's move on to the second item here, and it's what is yoga? And I can remember when I was a kid, my dad did a little bit of yoga, and later in life I started to think, hey, was he getting into Eastern religion? Not necessarily. So we want to be careful when we talk about yoga, because some people will say, oh, if you do yoga, then you are going against God, you're getting into paganism, et cetera, et cetera. There are exercises within one element of yoga that can be used to enhance your physical being, and there's nothing wrong with doing those things. The thing that's wrong is how the Hindu who does that type of yoga will look at it versus somebody in the West who's just doing the activity for their physical well-being. So I think we should make that kind of distinction about one element of yoga, because there are four major elements to what is called yoga within Hinduism. And I'll start with Carl this time and just ask you, what comes up for you? You don't, if you want to mention the 4 types that maybe you found, you can mention those, and then we can get comments from others on what they think about these different elements. But anything you want to say about it, Carl?
Okay, now here we go. Yeah, I was just going to mention that I remember, I guess around page 26, it talked about the 4, excuse me, the 4 aspects of yoga, and they were in order. They were knowledge, love, work, and the psychophysical. So, and the one that's they have their corresponding names. The one that was interesting to me, the one that's work, is karma. But then we read later on that maybe karma can have. It looked to me like karma could have 2 different definitions. Karma was one aspect of yoga, but then later on in the chapter, it talked about the karma that I think of, which is more the cause and effect. You know, if somebody does something bad, then something bad's going to happen to them.
Yeah. So good point there. When you think about karma, again, a word can be used for more than one meaning. But when you think of karma, it is like what you're doing, in life, whether it is good or bad. And lots of times, what your work is definitely involved in what can be good or bad. Your work can encompass more than just a labor for money or something along those lines. So your work can be more than that. And then that would get into this idea of karma, the good stuff and the bad stuff that you do in just whatever you're doing in life. So I understand it from that kind of double meaning there within that. But then there's definitely a discipline. There's definitely a discipline there within what you are doing is definitely connected to how the God is viewing you and how that can support you in your next rebirth, whether it's going to be better or worse for you in the next life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you've hit on the 4 major aspects here, and you gotten into the karma a little bit here. Sharon, do you have a favorite yoga there? Or do you want to say anything about it?
Are you talking about Sharon Wilson?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sharon Wilson. Sharon Wilson.
I don't have a favorite yoga, and because of its background, I have not ever done yoga. Just because I knew of the Eastern view of it, so I have not done it myself. But basically, if I understood it, it's just a way of training toward reaching your human potential or making that connection with God as they see it.
Yeah, I really like how you stated that, Sharon. I would agree with that. That's a good way of putting this. If we can try to relate this to Christianity or Islam, what we could say is that, Islam has the five major pillars of Islam. One of them being almsgiving. Another one is to go on the pilgrimage or the Hajj. Another one is to fast during Ramadan. So when you look at these activities, there's a similar connection here to yoga in Hinduism. Again, when you think of Christianity, hey, we all say we got to pray, we got to fast, we got to do good deeds, we got to go to church, we got to keep our holy days. Again, those types of things are similar to what the Hindus are doing in their religion with these 4 yoga aspects that we're talking about right now. So that's kind of how I would try to relate this to the Western side of things. These are activities within the religion. And so good point there, good point. Maria, do you have anything to add to this discussion?
I have tried yoga before for the pure sake of the exercise because it's good stretching, you know, for flexibility and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not very good at it because I have horrible balance. So I gave up pretty quick. I didn't stick with it. But you know, and occasionally you would get an instructor that it was more into the philosophical part of it. So it's kind of
Right.
creepy. But so the way I took it is that it's whoever takes it seriously, they're trying to find a way to control the body and the mind, like they work together or something, to achieve that, you know, connection with God or whatever. So it's like controlling both aspects in order to get to where they want to be.
Fantastic. Thank you for bringing that up. And that is correct. When you get over to India, some of the things these people do with the stretching and the limits and how long they go with this or how much they do of that, and also the Raja Yoga, the psycho physical exercises too. We can start talking about manipulating things into your body and fasting for long periods of time and sitting in certain positions or standing in certain positions. Again, it's trying to overcome, controlling the physical will then control the mind. So Maria's right on there in what they're trying to get at there. Now, again, we could go on and on and get into details of this, but we don't have time to. But if it's something that's of further interest to you, yes, there are some amazing things that some of these Indian yogas have done throughout history, and they've really pushed the envelope of what the human body can do. And that is interesting, I think, from a Christian standpoint. When we look at fasting or prayer, it says Jesus goes off to pray at night, and it sounds like he was doing it for a long period of time in some instances. And again, when we think of our prayer life, are we just putting 5 minutes in? Is it possible we could prolong that? And do we get something from that elongation of our prayer or going a little bit longer in a fast rather than one day? What about 36 hours? Again, I've done 3 days and 3 nights before. And what was interesting about that experience was that after that first day and a half, you really kind of reach this plateau where you're really not feeling hungry. I've done it a couple times, and something happens to the body or the mind that something kicks in that helps you plateau where you're okay. Now, again, I think everybody's going to be different in this, and I'm not a proponent of pushing yourself to extremes. I only bring it up from the standpoint of Jesus fasting, Moses fasting, Elijah for long periods of time. And the Bible doesn't say we need to do that, but it does say that we should fast not just one day a year. I think that when you do this, when you push yourself a little in these spiritual practices, there may be something that's going to be enhanced in your spirituality. And the way to find out is just to do it for yourself and just test with yourself. Don't go by what anybody else is saying or do what other people are telling you to do, because I want everybody to be safe, and everybody has different physical capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. But there is something here, and what I think I wanted to make this point, that when we see these similarities between Hinduism and Christianity, what I want you to get out of this course as we go along is, wow, there are similarities. And why is that? And I think part of the why is because of the manipulation of Satan, that Satan is going to use things that are similar to God's way And people will take to some of these things and think that every religion is the same. And as long as you're trying to reach God in some way, that it's okay. Look at all these similarities between the religions. But I think that's a great manipulative tool of Satan to have these great connections between the religions, which is going to fool people who don't really know their Bible. But that's me just getting on my soapbox there. Let me go to Jamie now on this same question, if you got anything else.
Yes, you touched on some of the points that I was going to make, especially where there's specific directions for, I guess, actualizing the human potential, where the yoga wants, like, I guess, to try and have complete control over the body and the mind. But it's what I got out of it, that it requires a rare combination of rationality and spirituality. So that sort of impressed me there. But as you touched on with prayer, you know, like when I pray, there's so many distractions, and your brain just sort of 3 or 4 seconds and you're distracted again. So trying to, I can see the point to try and rein that in with some of that, you know, just being aware of it and more conscious of it. So I think that's one of the similarities there. I know they go off with deeper into some of their meditative trances or whatever, but some of those points could be helpful, I think.
Yeah, great point, Jamie, on some of that could be helpful, because when you're praying or meditating, whatever it is you're dealing with in your mind with God in that communication, when we focus our mind in a certain area, we can create new neural pathways in our brain. So again, if you're trying to change something and you're meditating and you're talking to God, hey, I need to quit being angry all the time. I need to work on this anger. You know, when I'm angry, this happens. When I'm angry, that happens. If you're thinking about that for 10 minutes a day, you're actually going to start rewiring your brain a little, that when anger does manifest for you, because you're rewiring the brain a little by spending focused time on it, you might cause yourself to catch yourself more often than if you aren't meditating on it on a regular basis. So again, this idea that Jesus was praying so hard that he was sweating blood, you know, that really makes me think. I did a sermon called Focused Prayer, and it's on the CGI website if you want to look it up. But it gets into this idea what the neuroscientists are learning about the brain and on our focus and what we're thinking about, and how that does affect your brain chemistry and can alter it. And again, that led me to think about prayer and you know how focused and impactful we are in that prayer and in that meditation. So yeah, great point there, Jamie. Let me go to Neil.
In the middle of writing a note.
Okay,
Uh,
good.
let's see, wrong page. One thing I had written down here, that yoga is a method of training designed to lead to the integration or union of God and body. And it kind of makes sense, and same with on the line of meditation. We actually had this discussion this past Sabbath that they tried to tell me that because I was describing some meditation I had done in the past, and that the meditation that David did would have been different. It wouldn't have been like the meditation that the Hindus do. And I disagreed with them, because I think it is similar, because we are reaching out in that aspect to God. In their case, and this gets back to the Atman, that they're doing it as a union with God, where in our case it's more in fellowship with God. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Good point, Neil. Because some people, when they hear the term meditation, they get a little turned off and are wondering if we're getting into Eastern religion here. But but don't let Eastern religion control the word meditation, because Western religion gets into meditation too, and many times Jesus said he had to go away, or he needed to be separated from people, during his ministry to kind of recharge his batteries, I believe. And that's an important thing, that we do need sometimes separated from others. And I call that meditation. Now, what you're thinking about is important, because on the Eastern side, they sometimes try to clean their mind out. And that's an opportunity for things to then enter that mind. But when they clean that mind out, they're trying to get rid of what we should be getting rid out of our mind, the sinful thoughts, the lusts, the passions, the things of that nature. There's similarities to that on the Eastern side in what they're trying to do with meditation, but they will sometimes use certain words and focus on words. In Buddhism, that's done. So again, there are some things that can take you into the other realm there. And I actually experienced this. I met a person in a New Age religion, and this was in my younger days, and I wanted to see what this was all about. I was testing religion at the time, and I actually went into a meditation session. And what was interesting about it was this. So I put this caution out there, okay, that they wanted us to focus on something like we were on a sandy beach or something. And on this sandy beach, the person who was leading the meditation started talking about, feel the sun, hear the waves coming up onto the sand, and what was wild about it was, if you let your mind go and you had this person kind of leading you, I'll tell you, I was taken away for 5 minutes or so, and I was kind of there in a sense. It was very interesting to experience that and have a guided meditation with someone leading you. But what I caution you about is, be careful who's leading you. And again, this is a way for us to get manipulated by Satan and the demons, because I do believe that on the Eastern side of religion, meditation can open up our mind to other forces, especially when someone's leading a meditation, because some of them will try to bring in the spirits and things. Now, they weren't going to that extent here. I wouldn't have gone there, but watch out for that. Maria, you had something to say about this?
When I think of meditation, I'm just thinking that saying that you're intentional with something.
Say that one more time.
That you're intentional with what you're doing when you think about meditation.
Yeah, definitely. The basic meditation is intentionality. It's different from prayer. When I think of meditating versus prayer, prayer to me is I'm communicating, I'm saying things to God. When I'm meditating, I'm thinking. I'm focusing on some issue, some problem, and kind of working that in my brain. And, definitely God's Spirit's there, so he's aware of what I'm thinking, but it's not like I'm, talking to my friend. Like, that's how I feel prayer is for me. Carl, go ahead.
I just want to thank Neil for his comment about being united. And I seem to recall, I know I think there's a question coming up about similarities with Christianity. But I think in that section of the book where it was talking about united, it mentioned being yoked. And I thought that was interesting because, we're admonished, we're admonished not to be unequally yoked, but many times the scripture talks about my yoke is not burdensome. So I just thought it was interesting that there was this yoking concept to Buddha, or specifically to yoga.
Hey, you both you guys just made me think of this idea of yoking, and it's true in these other religions. There are aspects to these other religions where they want to bring you in through these certain activities you got to do. Buddhism has the same thing. Islam has it. We'll see in some of the Chinese religions, there's an aspect there also. And definitely with Christianity, you got to do some things to really get into the religion. So great points. Thank you for that. Sharon Thomas, anything to add?
Yeah, I was really glad to have the opportunity to talk, to read about their understanding of yoga, but also um, to hear your point of view, because I have heard ministers caution that we need to be careful of yoga because it can open up the body to spirits. And now that I see, if you're doing just the exercise part, like chair yoga and all of that, it really doesn't have anything to do with the spiritual, trying to connect to that inner being that's supposed to be, that you're trying to connect with. The other thing was when you brought up fasting, um, that's interesting. Did you fast from food and water?
Yeah, I did. I did for 3 days and 3 nights. And
Okay.
it was the second time I did it, it was much easier than the first time because I knew I could do it. But
Uh,
it was funny when you get into that second day, if you haven't gone that far before, you have that feeling of you're concerned, like is something going to happen to me? But you kind of reach this plateau where
mhm.
I could be honest with you, I was ready to eat something when I was done, but I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I got to eat now. I got to eat now. The first time I ever fasted, I felt that way towards the end of the day. And there are times when I'll do a 1 day fast where, sometimes I don't feel as good as other times. But the funny thing was with that 3 days, once I reached, a day and a half, it was just like kind of smooth sailing to the end of the 3 days for me, I'm saying. And,
Mhm.
I've done some reading on fasting since then. Uh, and again, there is something good that is done with fasting for your body because what happens is your body is no longer working that particular system. So your digestive system and all of that, that takes some work. Your body is doing work when you're eating, and if you're eating on a regular basis 3 times a day, your body continues to work through that process. So when you stop eating and digesting for, if you get up to 24 hours, that's good. If you go into the 36 range, that it's even better, at least according to some people, because then the body is now focusing the energy into other areas that may need it. And you're also doing things with eating up fat and this, that, and the other. There's all this stuff. It's called autophagy or something like that. You can read on it. Like there's a certain sweet spot in the amount of hours that your fast goes where something different starts to happen after this many hours as opposed to if you only fasted these many hours. But again, something to study up on because there definitely are health benefits to fasting. And again, God tells us to do that. Let's go to Sharon Thomas and then Sharon Wilson.
Okay. Just to finish up, I have there are some doctors that are coming out on the idea of fasting and using it for some very serious illnesses because it cleanses and rests the body, but it can also jumpstart the immune system.
Mm.
Question real quick, when we're talking about meditation, I have heard, and I haven't spoken to anybody that's done it. It was kind of, I can't remember if it was maybe a podcast or something, but they were using meditation in the sense of guiding your thoughts to go in and, like, people that have cancer, to kill the cancer. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I definitely have heard of that. And again, I'm not an expert on that subject to know, how that works or not. But just the thought of it, I can get that. I can get that. I've heard of things that, people meditating on, just their health in general. And I've read some things that some people have had some successes in that area. But again, I don't think that this is an ubiquitous thing that everybody has the same results, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I've heard some things about that. Sharon Wilson.
I was just going to say, going through cancer myself, I've obviously done a lot of reading and studying on that. And you mentioned the 3-day fast. Three days is supposed to be ideal. They say a 1-day fast doesn't always get you where you need to be, but 3 days. And a lot of people do it with water, not just a dry fast. But so 3 days is good, but you do go through kind of a little bit of a detox, and then that plateau is a normal thing to go through. And as far as the meditating that Sharon referred to, I personally go through, I listen to the healing frequency, and there's some people that think, oh, you shouldn't do that. But I do the healing frequency when I do my detox baths. And I do my meditating during that time. It's a healing frequency that plays. And a lot of people think, well, you can get into weird stuff. Well, I guess you can, but that's not where my mind is going. I use that time on meditating on his law and my healing and his healing powers. So
Are you
yeah,
talking
so there's a
about
lot to it.
those? Are you talking about those sounds you can play?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I don't see any issue with that because the sound is just a sound. Okay, just
Yeah.
like when I was the guy had us on a beach and the waves were coming up. So that, again, be careful with who's leading and what they're into. But again, that in itself. I actually felt like I was there, which really spooked. It felt like a dream. Okay, it felt like I was in a dream, and I said, "Wow, your mind can go places." Okay.
Well, I think you mentioned earlier that Satan can use those avenues, so that's what we have to be careful of, because the people can get into things, and he can take any good thing and turn it bad, or you can, so you just have to be careful what your motive and what your heart is telling you from the Lord.
Yeah, great point, Sharon. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm looking at the time, and we're getting a little bit behind schedule, but that's okay if we go over a little. But what I might do now, Sharon Wilson. Okay,
I
that
don't
was
need anything
okay.
else.
Okay, so
Just
what I'm going to do with the rest of these questions, let me just see like who's got wants to really answer one of these, and we can maybe take turns on them. But the next one is what does Hinduism teach that we want from life? Anybody want to handle that one? You can put your hand up if okay, let's go to okay, Neil.
Yeah, what I had put down was to be, to know, and joy.
Okay. So is that what you got out of the term moksha?
Yeah, I'll discuss that on a future question.
Okay.
Okay.
So what else did how else was that answered by anybody? Anything different than Neil?
Comment,
Yeah, go ahead,
Jamie.
Jamie. Go ahead, Jamie.
Um, what I got from reading out of it is you can have what you want. So pleasure, success, um, as long as you duty, liberation, that those are all encompassed in paths to have whatever you want. And there are different avenues for different people on different levels. And, it's kind of like, whatever, here's different pathways, you choose what you like best.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Is there an ultimate thing to achieve in Hinduism? Did anybody notice anything in the reading that like this is the okay, Carl?
I had written down that the ultimate goal of Hinduism is to get back to Brahman, which, if I understood correctly, Brahman is, I don't know, this whole deal of Hinduism and polytheistic gods. I think it was in this reading that the that they are very open to other religions because they feel like other religions are just, it's like we're all climbing the same mountain. It's just I'm climbing the west side and you're climbing the east side, and it doesn't matter how we get there. We're just all trying to get to the peak. And for them, I think that's to getting back to Brahman. That's what I got from it.
Yeah. So everybody's correct. Again, because Hinduism is so diverse, there are a lot of answers to this question. But the ultimate goal of a Hindu, what they're trying to achieve, their quote unquote salvation, is a term that's called moksha, and it means getting back to what Carl said, to Brahman, which is that ultimate God figure that is kind of impersonal. Like all the gods that help you get to Brahman eventually, they're kind of personal gods in Hinduism, but Brahman is this impersonal spirit, or just being that you're trying to stop the rebirth cycle and become part of this limitless energy that is God, that is Brahman, that is a drop of water in the ocean, like I said before. So that kind of deals with that question pretty well. I'm going to move on to the fourth question, which is, what does samsara mean? And again, this is a major concept in Hinduism. Anybody? Okay, Maria?
Oh, I'm not sure about this, but I think it's the cycle of birth and dying and rebirthing or whatever, like, those reincarnations and stuff.
Yes, it is. And once again, believe it or not, there were people during the history of Christianity who had a concept of reincarnation. Okay, I found that out in the last couple of years. There were some times in Christian history where people believed in reincarnation. And when you think of Mormonism today, they have this idea that they were once a spirit being and then they became a human being. So again, we see these ideas. They're all over these religions in different forms and fashions. Sharon Thomas.
Yeah, one thing that I didn't quite understand on the reincarnation thing, and I've heard some about it before, but it's what I wrote down was the soul outgrowing its body and moving to another. But if you think that here you are as a sentient being, no, sentient isn't the right word. You can talk, you can think, you can reason, and you become a insect or a cow or something. How is that going up the ladder? I didn't understand that part.
Okay, so great question. What was the statement that you heard again? Can you phrase that again? The way you put that threw
Um,
you off. What the statement that threw you off in this?
oh, the soul outgrowing its body and moving to another is what I
Okay,
got.
so remember, my understanding here is you're not necessarily always going to be going up. It has something to do with your karma. If you were a dastardly person in life, if you were a despot and you did terrible things to people, that maybe you're going to go back towards the animal world, or down to the untouchable level within the caste system. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to a better place or a higher place. you could go in the other direction. And then what's interesting though is some of those animals, like I'll take the cattle as an example. Highly respected animal in India. I was there in the major city of New Delhi, and yes, there were cattle laying on the main roads, and nobody moved them or touched them. They just left them alone. The cattle could do whatever they want. I remember going to the zoo in New Delhi, and the monkeys were out of the cage running around in the zoo. I got a little concerned because I was like, hey, that's a wild monkey. I don't know what it's going to do. But there's this idea that they got a rat god. You can go to a temple that has all these rats running around. So again, I don't know all the details of how they look at these animals in a higher sense, because they represent gods in some ways. And how would that relate to someone who goes back and becomes a cow, because a cow is a noble animal to them, and that could be that life of giving milk and whatever the cow does, that could lead you to coming back into the human side. Sharon, you got your hand up, Sharon Wilson.
I just wanted to ask, I mean, if I understood the Samsara correctly, it's endless passages, so you could do that several times. There's no ending. So within that, I'm assuming that you're hoping that you will get to the Brahman and not have to go through another passage. Is that the idea?
Yeah, but you don't. You want to get the karma aspect of things. There's this idea that you want to do better to get to higher levels,
Okay.
and when you get like to these higher levels, that's when you can get to the ultimate level.
Okay.
So what Sharon is saying, there is some relevance to that, but you're correct. You could recycle. There's ideas where this just goes on and on for long periods of time, that until we get to that new cycle of beginning. There's these ages they have within Hinduism. Sharon Thomas, you had your hand up.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm gonna get off of the recurring cycle of samsara there, and we're gonna move on to the fifth question, which is, what is Maya? And anybody want to tackle that one? What is Maya? Okay, Sharon
I,
Thomas. And then we'll
I'll
go to
try.
Neil.
What I wrote down is the world that normally appears to us a mental fabrication, and I found that troubling, to think that you're actually living in a fabricated world.
Okay, and what's interesting about that concept is I got a book behind me here, The Grand Biocentric Design, Beyond Biocentrism and Biocentrism. And the guys writing that book, a series of books, he gets into some ideas about, from a Western perspective, that maybe it's all an illusion, or the Truman Project with Jim Carrey, the movie, where he was in a simulation, and but even in Christianity, you can get into that idea a little bit with the things that are in heaven. There's a tabernacle in heaven. There's gods in heaven. We're an image of God who is in heaven. That the physical realm that we exist in, is it something God created to teach us lessons? Then he brings us back into this other realm, the spiritual realm, that we don't really completely understand. So that's similar to what Hinduism is saying about, life is an illusion. that these cycles that take place in Hinduism, where everything starts all over again, the idea that you are part of this ultimate God that kind of put you out into the world, just like our God created us or started us. Do you see the similarities here, even though there are differences? There are definite differences, but there are some similarities in how these religions are talking about the beginning of things, the end of things, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you're pretty good though in talking about what Maya means. Basically, that everything's kind of an illusion. We're seeing life kind of as a movie that we're in, and that gets at the idea of what the ultimate Brahma is, the ultimate God is. That we're all gods, and we've been thrown out into this existence for a period to try to reconnect with the ultimate again. Now, why we were thrown out and why we're going back again, I'm not sure of all the details of that within Hinduism, but that is true that this life is an illusion in some sense, is what they are getting at. And when I think about my Christian walk, I try to I do that a little bit in this sense that my physical nature, my carnal nature, which wants to do this or wants to do that or feels this or needs that, I have to stop that, if I'm trying to walk like Christ. You get what I'm saying? So my physical side, I've got to make that into an illusion in a sense that that's not really what I should be doing. I should be doing the spiritual side. Now, again, there's some overlap there, of course, but can you see a similarity there also in, Jesus saying that when we're walking with him, we're dead to ourselves. So again, this is a similar idea in Hinduism, that it's an illusion, that you got to realize what the real is, what you're in, and all the passions and things that you get hooked up on, that's illusory. It's not going to last. It's going away. And that element is in Hinduism to some degree, just like it's in Christianity, but it's said in different ways. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So listen, we're getting near the end here. We got the one more question on the two videos. So again, I want to get some comments. What the videos brought out to you? Who wants to comment on either one of the videos?
I'll start.
Yeah, Neil, go ahead, please.
Well, I'm I'm sure glad that Mr. Smith, is that the author's name?
Yeah.
He does an excellent job of presenting the information. The videos to me was it 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 explained to me that Hinduism is confusion,
Yeah. I can
and
agree
I'll
with.
just yeah I'll just leave it at that.
I'll tell you what, Neil, when I went to India, and then I had taken some religion courses before, and I went to India, and it was confusion. And from this standpoint, I was talking about the animals running around. People would go peeing on the side of the road everywhere and anywhere. Now they have less bathrooms than we do, but it was just like, it was shocking to me to see people just peeing wherever. Okay, now they turn their back to you, but it was like that was something that struck me. Again, there was a lot of modernity in the main city, but right with that modern buildings, then just over here, a few miles away, extreme poverty and shanty towns where people were living on top of people. And it was like, I'm not talking about, the projects or something in the US. I'm talking about utter poverty was right there. You know, it was all around. I saw a truck that was turned over on a main road, and we went on a drive, and we went a couple hours the other way, and we came back like 5 hours later. This is a main road. Nothing had been done with that truck. It had spilled stuff all over the road. So yeah, it was. And then I went to the temples there, and you'd see people putting out food for, you know, the monkey god. You know, all this food was laying out there before an idol for the monkey god. And you know, you know there's not a monkey god. There is no monkey god, you know. But it was like some of these people really do believe in that monkey god in some, not the educated classes, but but millions of people. There are over 1 billion people in India, and millions do believe in these lesser gods, and they go to their temples and they put money there. And it was confusion to me being there, seeing all this happening at the same time. Sharon Wilson, Thomas, Sharon Thomas.
One thing that I thought was interesting was their explanation of the caste system, and how at one time, you know, it was kind of like you take a personality test and you figure out which one you're supposed to be in, and it actually helped people, but then it got perverted. And then they made a rule that said you could never change from that. So I'd heard the negative side of the caste system, never the positive. So that was interesting.
Yeah, you know what else is interesting about that point? In all the religions I've studied, you know, and you guys know it in Christianity, the original religion that began has been changed through time. In every religion, it is true. And that's one example of something within Hinduism that has changed over time. A great point to make there. Let me go to Sharon Wilson.
I just, a couple of things that stood out to me, and I think you mentioned this in the beginning. The syncretism, how they talked about the plethora of gods, the Shiva, the Vishnu, and the Brahma, but how those were all just different aspects of trying to get to the Brahman, so, or to that fundamental God. So I think that struck me, as well as all of the sacred texts. I didn't realize that they had so many. And I can just tell you from studying this, what briefly we have here, I don't think I would be reading any of the Upanishads. I think that would be way too much for me.
Okay, thank you. Carl.
Yeah, thanks for everybody's comments. This is actually more of a question. I'm going to lead up to it. You know, the one of the videos, and I think it was the longer one, I can't remember for sure, where it was going through the you know, their trinity, the three major deities, and I think it was in that first one you mentioned syncretism, how it was had joined all the different beliefs from the different areas of India into this Hindu religion. And there was a comment made, and I think it was in the video, but they made the comment that for all the differences, that they don't have any serious infighting. You know, when I think of Christianity, you think of, I mean, I always think of Ireland, you know, with the Catholics and the Protestants, you know, just literally killing each other over there. And there's been some rough times, you know, even in the United States between Catholics and Protestants, if you go back far enough. But I found that rather fascinating, that you have this religion that encompasses, you know, as you said, 1 billion people, all these different aspects that have been melded into one through syncretism. Is that, I guess I'm not questioning the author, but that's just almost hard to believe that there's no infighting between the different, because, you know, it mentioned in the video, you know, you got some people that focus on this God and other people focus on this God. And then I think it was also in the video that said, well, we really don't have multiple gods. It's just multiple facets of the one God. And but anyway, that's a different question. But my question is, are they really that peaceable if they don't fight amongst each other?
So, uh, are you still hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I will say this. As far as Hinduism itself, that seems to be something I read a lot about, that they're open to having different ideas within Hinduism itself. But what's funny about that is the feeling between Hindus and Muslims within India. They actually kill each other, on both sides of this through the history of India since it's been a country. There have been a number of occurrences of violence against the other religion, even and Christians also, where Hindus have killed Christians who are in India because they're bringing the gospel there, and they don't want Hindus to get into that. Now, you could argue and say, well, the Hindus are okay with you believing in Christ as long as you don't try to get a Hindu to believe in Christ. So, but that gets at your point though, Carl, that if they're open to everything and there's lots of ways to get to God, it seems like they're just saying that within India, what we've come up with, that's what we mean by open ways. I've heard them say, "Oh, Jesus Christ, that's a way to God." Also, I've heard that about Hindus who will say that Jesus is just another way. He's like one of these avatars who brought the God principle to the world. But again, when you go to India, or you study the Muslim, Hindu, and even Christians, but Christians are so much less in India that you don't see it as much. But there are numerous examples throughout the last 20 years of real violence between Hindus and Muslims in India. Now that goes both ways. The Muslims are doing things to the Hindus too in some parts where they are more popular.
At the very
But
end of the chapter, there was 3 pages that talked about the Sikhs, and that seemed to imply that that was an outcome of this Hindu-Islam conflict.
yeah, and so we don't get into Sikhism in the class, but you're right. If you study Sikhism, it's a combination of Hinduism and Muslim stuff. And so that's why and again, there's some issues between Hindus and Sikhs in India, a lot of issues. You may have heard in the last couple of years where the guy who leads India now, he's part of a real right-wing political Hindu party in India. They sent some guys into Canada a few years ago to try to kill some Sikhs who were speaking against the Indian government. So this is the leader of India probably had to okay that within his secret police service. And again, the Hindus wanted to kill the Sikhs because they were saying negative things about the Hindu government. So I would read that to a certain point, but it's not completely true that they don't lash out violently at other religions. They're kind of open. As long as you're a Hindu, they can have some differences of opinion there, but they definitely have some issues with other religions for sure. Any final comments anybody wants to make today on anything we've said about Hinduism? Again, this is a huge subject. We can't do it justice in an hour, but Smith gives you a pretty good overview. And of course, there's so much you can read out there on this particular topic. The one other thing I did want to say was what I'm doing is I'm trying to show you some of these similarities. And again, that video on the gods, the Trinitarian idea within Hinduism, again, it's a different Trinitarian idea than the Christian Trinitarian idea, but there definitely are some similarities too that this is an aspect of a God, that God is manifesting in different ways. And what else is funny is those three major gods, they kind of have kind of amorphous sexuality also, which is interesting when you get into Hinduism. There is some stuff in there about their gods and homosexuality and transgenderism, and there's some aspects to that with their gods, okay, which is getting into, again, I think Satan's, manifesting in these religions. Sharon, you got Sharon Wilson.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. Carl and I were discussing this earlier. In studying this, it makes the Bible to me come alive a little bit more. When the Israelites came out of Egypt, God had to tell them, have no other gods before me. You can kind of just go right over that, but you realize how impactful those other gods were. I mean, he had to tell them that over and over. Idolatry, that all of that.
That's a great point, Sharon, because, when I said, transgenderism and, this and that, again, in India, okay, let me give you one more story from India. So one other thing that shocked me there, like the confusion. So, as I was walking around going to different places, I'd see a lot of young men holding hands with another young man. And, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I asked some of the people that were Indian there, what's going on with this? And then I did some research on it. But a lot of young men in India, when they're in their late teens or early 20s, they kind of connect with just another young man. And you say, well, why is that common, at least among some people? Well, if in your religion, like Neil was saying, there's this confusion about gods being amorphous. They're part male, they're part female, there's this mix up going on there. Then I could see why young men would think, oh, there's nothing wrong with me hanging out with the guy for a while until I get married, because with the dowry system and the way marriage is set up there, a lot of these guys don't have opportunities sometimes to get married as soon as they want to. That whole thing is in play there, that if you've got this religion that has this mismatch of gods, and you can pick an elephant god or a monkey god or a transgender god, then it's going to mess you up a little bit in knowing what truth is and what you should be doing. So thanks for bringing that into this also. I did do a little reading on that later. And again, you can look it up on India culture, and just look up like young men dating young men, or young men at certain ages getting with young men who later get married and have a family. But they go through this little thing here, not all of them, but it was something that you would see on the street and you would notice it, So thanks for bringing that in. There's so much that we can get into about this, but again, that confusion that Neil mentioned, yeah, when you start to look at these other religions and you see this confusion, it's more evidence to me of who started these religions. Okay. Yeah, Neil, and then Sharon Thomas to finish.
Well, I'm just going to mention that some of the similarities between Christianity and Hinduism incorporates that confusion. And I'm talking about traditional Christianity, the Trinity, of course. No matter how, I listen to Christian talk radio, and they try to explain the Trinity, and it's impossible. But also heaven and hell. You're going to burn forever. No, sooner or later, the fuel is going to run out. And they cannot grasp that. They got to promote this, burning forever and ever and ever. And, to me, that's just part of the same confusion. And guess where it came from?
Right. Great point about confusion. And what does the Bible say? God is not the author of confusion. Okay, Sharon Thomas to finish.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Do you know, since you've been there and done some study, obviously, where they stand on abortion or illegitimate children?
Great question. I don't have a ready answer to that, Sharon. But that's something I definitely want to look up now that you brought it up. But I would think that, I'm trying to think. Hinduism can be very conservative in some ways. Um, but with the confusion within the religion, but then the population there too makes me. I don't know, Sharon, but that's something I'm going to look up after I get off with you guys. And what was the second question?
I put them together.
Oh, illegitimate children, right? Well, I will say this: it definitely is a problem. I mean, you see street kids all over the place running around. Again, I know that they're definitely in the shanty towns and the orphans, the amount of orphans that are there. Again, you remember Mother Teresa and her work there. There definitely is large numbers of people in that category there, but I just don't know because it is a very traditional society in some ways too, at least with the males and the females and their place. Although that is changing to some degree, the caste system is changing to some degree. It's still there, but it's not as rigid as it was, say, 100 years ago, 50 years ago. So there are changes afoot. But good question, Sharon. I'm sorry I don't have the answers to those, but we can Google them.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, gang. Hey, I enjoyed this. Thanks for your comments and questions. Really made me think about things, and I'm gonna save this tape and I'll send it to those who were not able to join us. And thanks again. We'll catch you next week. Remember, we're opening up lesson 3 tomorrow, so you can begin the reading for that. And again, it's the next chapter in the book, and we'll continue. See you next Thursday.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
Mike.
night.